that is something that I do agree with, like Snap and Ubuntu, that by default auto updates are turned on, and I agree. I think auto updates should be turned on by default. I just think you should also have the option to turn them off if you're tech savvy enough to know
You
what you're
can.
doing.
There's an experimental option in Snaps that lets you turn it off.
In Snaps,
Yeah,
that's recent
it
because
is recent.
the answer used to
They
be
only added
sorry
it, I
bub
believe, a month
no
ago. I believe they added it a month ago.
after everyone's screaming, because I looked this up like years ago. So after everyone's screaming bloody murder for years, they're like, fine, we'll
Snaps
give
are
you.
just disadvantaged at the beginning, and they also lock you into using App Armor and Canonical's backend. So in front of me here, this is the beta website, and I actually have all of it here. Yes, there's full-on articles and everything. I'm not going to show some of it because some of it's in production right now. Look, you can even get a search bar to search things. But what I have in front of me right here is this is the article that I was actually working on, which Ubuntu broke and it doesn't work anymore. So I'm really upset because I did test this on Ubuntu with a different application, and then I tested it with multiple other applications, and it still does not work. So I have just given up and said snaps are hopeless. All right. So basically, I've described snaps here, and I'm going to try to address some of their criticisms here. I've not listed all of them here, but I'm going to briefly mention it. So all right, why snaps? Snaps have already earned themselves a negative reputation among many circles online and are largely negative. Number one, most people don't like Ubuntu pushing snaps or packaging Chromium as a snap. But as a side note for me, Debian's maintainers are way too taxed and can't keep up with the fast pace of like maintaining Chromium. So like in my mind, Canonical actually made the right decision here. However, in the defense of the people who don't like this does cause issues with like accepting USB devices over Chromium. So, for example, using Chromium as a snap will not let you use security keys. And also, there's a hilarious post in the Graphene OS website installer guide where Daniel McKay snidely says that like the snap version of Chromium is like crippled and you shouldn't use it. Yeah. So basically, like there's like it's fine, but like just be aware that like there are caveats of using Chromium as a snap. Most people don't like the concept of Snap's backend being proprietary. Again, in my mind, I'm like, this is kind of dumb because like even if Snap's backend was open source, how would you prove that they're actually running that as their backend? You legitimately couldn't. Like
I mean,
because it's a central store.
can you prove that for like apt and DNF
No.
and
No, you can't.
homebrew? And I mean, you might be able to verify homebrew
Yeah, homebrew you can't because it's just scripts. But
because it's
not
just like, I mean, I guess you can't verify GitHub where it gets everything from.
well, GitHub's proprietary, so
Yeah. So I mean, eventually, if you go far enough down the line, it's eventually proprietary.
right. So it's like that's why I'm saying it's like
It's
completely
turtles all the
it's
way
empty.
down.
Like making like internal systems like open source in my mind is you have to understand is very difficult and it's honestly silly. Like like it's kind of an empty gesture. It's like yeah, it's nice if it is your actual code, and it's commendable if you do that, but you have to understand that it's expensive for businesses to actually do that, and it's probably easier for it to be proprietary. Okay, I'm getting on my high horse. Number three, many people, including me, hate that Snap literally makes a log of everything you install, assigns a unique ID to your installation. Yes, so even if you go to the Snapcraft store, they talk about all the metrics they collect about you. Isn't this great? And it's like, you should not be bragging about this in your app store. This is honestly awful. Like, if you do this, like, why? Who at Canonical thought this would be a good thing? But of course, we all know that Canonical has a nasty history of like inserting in like telemetry like by default on their users. And it's like, is it better than Windows? Absolutely. But that still doesn't make it any less like awful. Like it's honestly unacceptable. Because it's like there's all the reason why it's unacceptable is because there's literally no way to opt out of Snap telemetry at all. Like none. And also I do want to point this out. I point this out every single time I talk about like protecting your data breaches. Like anonymized statistics will eventually be de-anonymized. So it's only a matter of time that like Ubuntu's allegedly anonymized statistics are going to be de-anonymized, even if it's something silly like the flavor of Linux you installed snapd on, the branches and repos you enable, or the time zone you rely in. Like
I mean, I guess from my perspective, there are two reasons people move to Linux. One is privacy, and two is owning your own system. So, like, you can, if you have, you could use Arch, you can specify every single program that you have running on your computer, and you know exactly what it's doing at every moment. And you can do that with Linux, where you absolutely cannot do that with Mac or Windows or anything else. The problem with snaps that just boggles my mind is those are the two target demographics of Linux. And Ubuntu's like, actually, no, we're going to implement this thing that is.
You can't own your own snap. What do you mean? You can own your own snap. What are you talking about?
It's going to force you to do updates, and it's going to force you to do telemetry.
But that has nothing to do with ownership.
I would say, if I can't say no, then I don't own it. As in, like, I should be able to say no, I don't want this thing to happen.
Yeah, but
and if I
this
can't,
stuff,
if I don't have an option,
you shouldn't blame packages for for this sort of thing. I think that's kind of silly.
I'm just saying, give me the option to not upgrade should I so choose to. I don't even care if I have to jump through hoops. I'm just saying, give me the option. Like I don't care how esoteric or how weird. I don't care if I have to dig through files somewhere, if it's like in some form from 5 years ago that I have to find the explanation. I just want the ability to do so.
So this part of the video is actually still valid. And I might do something on this sometime, but it is parallel installs. This is actually something that's actually unique to snaps and doesn't exist in any other doesn't exist in Flatpaks, doesn't exist in app images. It's something that is wholly unique to snaps. And what you do is, if you do sudo snap set system experimental parallel instances true, if you do that, what this does is this will actually let you duplicate multiple instances of like a program. Like, even if you have the same program installed.
You could do it with app images, but I guess there's not really a package.
But it doesn't separate your configuration files. That's because what if you use a program which won't let you set custom configuration file locations? So, for example, you can't, if
Docker.
Audacity, if you use Snap, you can't set custom configuration files for Audacity. You have to use the default .audacity like configuration folder. You can't use a different folder. Like, and same thing with like Firefox, right? You can't use a different folder with Firefox if you're going to use multiple installs of Firefox. I don't recommend you do it anyway, but like, just an example. But if you do, like, if you enable this option, you do sudo snap install bitwarden _1. What this will do is this will install bitwarden as bitwarden _1, and then this becomes a new executable for you to do it. Now, the reason why this video got cut, because it was a large portion of the video, is because I said, oh, you can change the icons. Turns out you could change the icons, but what they do is, instead of respecting your icon choice, the icon just becomes the stock gear icon in libadwaita. This is just a problem. This is nature of the application. Like, well, I understand why this changed, but this does invalidate a portion of the video, which is why I ended up cutting the video. Like, if you go to this folder, you go look up your application, you go to icon equals in the .desktop file, and then change it to whatever you want. And then you go in the GIMP and give it a different icon. It'll work. That used to work. Doesn't work in my testing anymore. So I've just given up and said, this is not worth your time. And then I also gave some links to the initial documentation from Igor Labunchik, if that's even how you say his name. Then it's this. That's it. This is what you do. That's how you do it. That's how I figured it out. But now I'm basically like, yeah, just have a Flatpak beta and just install that as a separate one. I'm not dealing with this anymore.